thì sau khi chiến tranh kết thúc á, thì người lính của Việt Nam á, lúc nào ta cũng nghĩ về Tổ quốc, có nghĩa là hết chiến tranh thì trở lại biên chế, phục vụ cho Tổ quốc, phục vụ cho nhân dân, phục vụ cho gia đình, chứ hoàn toàn họ không có oán trách một cái gì, họ vẫn vui vẻ bắt tay công việc mới thôi, không có gì.
We hope you have enjoyed your flight with us. On behalf of Vietnam Airlines, we look forward to meeting you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
While it didn't look at all like it did, 50 years before, it was a very kind of peaceful reunion, I guess. I can't think of a better way to describe it, but it was this kind of beautiful, beautiful setting. It helped a lot, actually. It made it a little harder to remember precisely, what the environment looked like. But when we walked up the hill, the small rise, which is kind of the center of that battle, it was comforting. It really was. And Young and I were standing there side by side and kind of talking about it. And we were looking out in the rubber plantation, seeing some people working, kind of just chopping up old trees. And it was again a very peaceful place to see and to visit, knowing that it had this horrific history.
It must have been terrifying for him to be in the jungle when these bombs went off, just to mention.
Going over to the bomb crater and talking a little bit about, what the impact those bombs had on them and how terrifying it was. 50 years before, this had been a war zone, a really bad war zone. He'd been my enemy, and we were going to a place where his people killed one of my guys, and we probably killed a lot of his folks. So there was a lot going on in my head at the time.
I honestly think that Vietnamese veterans, or even Vietnamese people in general, we don't usually talk about the war anymore. When you bring me to that journey, it like bring me closer to the war. And I never thought that people, when they go for fight, they're all so young, Vietnamese side and American side. It's hard for me to meet your dad and see that he and his friends still feel very bad about the war. So I think it's time to let go.
We did a lot of damage there, and I still feel guilty about that. I felt guilty about when I first went, and I was kind of expecting, I was on guard a little bit when I met the NVA, former NVA soldiers, expecting some anger or hostility, and I was really surprised when there wasn't any.
Wow, lots of kids.
How old am I? How old do you think I am? I am 67. Yeah. I was 19 when I was here.
75.
Oh, really? You don't look 75. Oh, thank you.
Đoàn Phú Lợi á, thủ trưởng của tiểu đoàn Phú Lợi á.
He's the leader of the Phu Lợi.
Thủ trưởng.
Dạ, bác nói là rất vui là được gặp bác.
Wow. See the battalion commander?
Yes.
Colonel. Wow.
Cái thời của ảnh là lúc ảnh đổ bộ từ Sài Gòn lên là lúc đó mình bán cái thùng cà lem cho Mỹ rất nhiều, thùng cà lem.
He said when you come, he was selling ice cream.
10 tuổi thôi.
Selling ice cream?
Yeah, he was.
Bán hết luôn.
In 1967,
Yeah, he was
selling
only.
ice cream?
Đổi đồ hộp của Mỹ. Rất
He
nhiều.
was only 10 years old, and he was selling ice cream for everyone, including Americans.
Where was he selling ice cream? Phuoc Vinh?
Ở từ Bình Phước đó là
Yên Hóa?
nhất.
In Bình Phước, so nearby.
Sài
Okay.
Gòn á, Bình Phước.
Yeah. So he's selling for everyone, including American and.
I hope I bought ice cream from him.
Thôi. Nice meet you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
maybe just say, Mr. President, and all of you from the members of the Phuoc Battalion, I'm really honored to be here.
Bác nói là được ngồi đây với bác chủ tịch với lại mọi người đây thì bác cảm thấy rất là vinh dự. Nói chung là cũng không có cái dịp nào mà có thể quay lại ngồi chung với mọi người như thế này.
We are friends.
We are, aren't we?
Yeah. So they say close the past. Yeah.
Why do you think the Vietnamese don't feel any resentment or didn't show any resentment?
Well, I think as we heard, from Jung, it was about, quickly getting over the war and rebuilding the country. And so they didn't have the time to reflect. They didn't have the luxury of self-reflection. These were people who fought for their country. I mean, Jung walked for 9 months from North Vietnam, from Hanoi down to South Vietnam when he was 17 or 18 years old to fight. So I saw tremendous dedication to their country. They lost, 1.5 million people or something. We learned that there are 300,000 MIAs that are still unaccounted for in the Vietnamese army. So I saw kind, compassionate people, but with a grit, with the ability and the willingness to sustain a conflict for 10 years. So I left having tremendous respect for them as people.